So today we're going to be doing birds. Specifically, we're going to be doing feathers and eyes and the things that are a little bit more important about birds. So I'm going to just take a minute here to try to see if I can see what you see. It should come up any minute, I hope. But in the meantime, um, this painting is the third. No, this one, the one I'm going to be working on is the third one in the series of Cardinal paintings. So I just wanted to give you a little background and show you what I had been doing prior to this one. If you have any comments or, if you're out there, just type something into the box so I know you're here. And I think I'll be able to see your comments this time so that I can answer them in real time, hopefully. All right. So what I'm doing is a series. I'm painting in a series. So what that means is that I take one subject and I paint it over and over and over again, doing variations every time. And then hopefully I learn something from that. And also I I get more comfortable with the subject. I can learn a little bit more about, how what that subject entails. And there we go. Yay. Sorry, I'm trying to do two things at once and get my microphone out of your view. That cord is not very attractive. Okay, so here we go. This is the first one in the series. What I did was I had a photograph of a cardinal in the wintertime, and I did a little bit of texture. You can see some, you know, uh, texture marks here and there. I just used some wall compound to get that effect. And I just wanted to see how that would play the with the cardinal. I could have got texture using just paint, but it's a little more expensive to do it that way, and I wasn't able to get the same effect. So I'm not sure that I'm thrilled with it, but it was a learning experience. The part I really liked, and let's see if I can bring it up closer, is where you get all those little skips and stuff in there. I really like that. So that was the first painting. Then I thought I liked painting this cardinal, but I really preferred just working on the eyes. I didn't feel like I got enough traction. I didn't get enough I didn't have enough fun painting the eyes. So I thought, what would I do to change that? Well, I could just paint the head. So that was my next incarnation of this in this series. Grab the next one. So then I thought I just concentrated on the face and the head. This one, I thought, oh, I can't do a big painting of that big, relatively big. The other one that you saw was a 8x8. This is a 6x6 or smaller. No, sorry, the other one was 12x12. This is a 6x6. And yeah, I liked it, but I felt like I could do more if the face was larger. So that's when I went to this one. And now I have a lot of room that I can work on the face. And I also played a little bit more with the background. I didn't use an abstract I'm sorry, I didn't use the texture this time. I thought maybe I'll put the texture in the cardinal itself with paint. But I did want to try something different. So I abstracted some shapes in the background. And what does that mean? I tried to distill the shapes of the cardinal to its least it's almost like fractions, when you go for the least common denominator. So for me, that was this cardinal. The shapes of the cardinal is a square and two triangles. So that's how I came up with that background. Don't know if it's finished. I'm not sure, if I want to do any more to it. And I'm going to see if I can just shift this a little bit without making too much of a mess here, so you can see a little bit more. All right, so that's where that is. So just a little bit of background about why I'm painting this particular thing. Hi, Lynn. I see Lynn is here. If you're here, just type in so I know you're there. I did try to tag people. Apparently you have to be my friend for me to tag you, so I'll change that. I'll send out a friend request to the people who had wanted to be tagged and weren't my friends. I think I have almost hit my friend limit of 5,000, so I might have to delete some people so that you can get in. At any rate, so if you have any questions, type in your question. If you have a friend that you think would like to watch the video, then just tag your friend. And if you don't know how to do that, just type their name in. And when it gets bold, then they'll see it, hopefully, before this is over or during the replay. Well, I want to talk to you a little bit about what I'm using. Obviously, I have paper towels, and I've cut them into little pieces, and that's important. I'll show you why in a minute. And the brushes I'm using are, I'm using some filberts and some smaller round brushes. And I have one flat brush when I do the texture on the bird. I'll be using that, or the feathers rather. So these are synthetic brushes, meaning that they are man-made hair. And they're a little bit, they have some spring. So when I push down on the surface, the hairs bounce back for me. They're relatively long hairs, compared to the flat. You can see that the hairs are a little bit longer. It gives me a little bit more spring. Okay, that's important for this particular painting, for doing the bird. And then my palette, I have just a piece of gray glass, and I have squeezed my colors out already. And you'll see that I pre-mixed a few colors. Now, because the Cardinal has so many bright colors, I didn't pre-mix a lot because I'm going to be using a lot of color straight out of the tube. So here I have my normal colors: titanium white, cad yellow, cad red, transparent red oxide, alizarin crimson, ultramarine blue. The other colors that you're seeing along the sides are left over from another painting, and I didn't want to throw them out, so they're still on my palette. The color that I'm using that I don't normally have on my palette is this azo coral, or you could use, cad orange. I wanted a real bright orangey red because I'm going to be needing that for it to show up on the surface. So even though the Cardinals are really bright bird, I have to still have some dull color there. Otherwise, I don't have any contrast. I don't have any place for, any room to grow. I don't have any, if I put bright color next to bright color, all I get is, a vibration that isn't going to show up as if I had a dull color next to a bright color. That's the other reason for the dull background. The background is pretty, it's a green, but it's a very neutralized green, and that green helps the red show up better. So you'll see that I just basically blocked colors in here. I haven't done too much detail at all. When I start drawing, I draw with oil paint, just one color, usually, raw umber or something like that. And I'll do that outline. I want to get the relationships correct. I want to make sure that the eyes are in the right place, the beak is in the right place relative to each other. Because if I don't get that, then it doesn't matter how many pretty colors I put on. So painting birds, you might think it's difficult, and you're right. It's not the painting part that's difficult, it's the drawing. If you can get your proportions correct, then it's the rest is easy. Painting birds is not hard. It's getting the proportions correct. And there's some really great books about you know, drawing birds. I'll actually type that in when this is over so that you can see what my references, what I use. And a little bit about me, if you're just joining me, my name's Lena. I am an artist in South Central Pennsylvania. I'm a contemporary realist painter, meaning, you know, my paintings look realistic, but I still like to have a little bit of room for some impressionistic effects. They're not photorealistic. And if you want to read more about me, you can just go over to my website. It's lena-ferrara.com, and you can read about my background and all that if that's something you want to do. So let's get back to painting this bird. I'm going to start with the most important part, I think, and that's the eyes. Now, the first thing I did, or the last thing I did and let it dry a few days ago, was I based in this circle pretty much black. I did put a little bit of blue at the top and just a little bit of light on the edge of the eye, and then I put a sort of a highlight with, you know, white or gray that I had on my palette. Now I can go back and intensify that. So I'm gonna grab my other painting so I can go by a little bit of what I had done before. So the eyes are reflective. It's almost like painting grapes. They're like a sack filled with fluid. So the light is going to hit. I'm gonna reestablish the light for you right now. I'm also using some walnut oil that was going to help me thin out my paint when I need to thin it out. And whenever I use a liner brush or a small brush, I want to thin out my paint. So the highlight, I'm going to reapply it more than once, but I want to have a nice glint in his eyes. It brings a whole bird to life when you put that in. So I wouldn't normally do that till the end, but I wanted to show you something, and it helps if that light is in there. Okay, so if the light's entering from the upper right or left, depending on how you're seeing it on the screen, it's going to travel through, and there's going to be a little bit of light that comes through on the opposite side. Again, just like grapes. So I want to give this another little indication that light is passing through. I don't want it to be white, so it can't be as light as that. Otherwise, he's going to look strange, almost like he has cataracts. So I've had pre-mixed a color that I'm using in my bird. I've mixed up a purplish color, and I'm going to just add a little bit of that to the lower part of his eye. And I think you can see how that it separates it from the dark feathers around his face, but it also just gives it more roundness. So I'll do that also here on the other eye. I don't want to do too much because I don't want that to look like it's bulging, and I'll reevaluate it when I'm done painting. The other thing I want to do is the sky is reflecting in his eyes at the top part of his eyes. So I'm going to put a little bit of a light blue there. And that's just ultramarine blue with a little bit of white. And I want to put that, I would have put that normally before I put the highlight, but it doesn't matter. I'll just put it around the highlight. I don't want to get too much light in there. If you get too much light up in their eyes, that it sort of looks like cataracts. We don't want our bird to have cataracts. There was also a little tiny bit of light reflecting on this side of the eye from the photograph. And again, I want that to be different than anything else that I've put on here. So I'm gonna just go with a yellowish color, and just yellow ochre and white. And that's something I have on my palette already, so I'm just going to pick that up. I have it on my palette from another painting, but it worked, so there we go. All right, that might be too big, but I'll play with it. So around this highlight, I want it to be really, really dark. And I have pre-mixed some black. And that the black I use is ultramarine blue and transparent red oxide. I like to mix my black because I have control over whether it's cooler or warmer, meaning is it more blue or more brown. And now I'm going to darken. I think I am going to pull over that light. Oh, that's better. Just a little bit. And maybe even here. I want to integrate it. I don't want it to look separated. And I'll do the same thing here. I want to treat the eyes almost the same. See, there's too much light on this one. He's getting that weird cataract look. There we go. So I'm relatively happy with those eyes for now. We'll see what happens when I paint a little bit more. This dark area here, I just blocked in some different dark values. So I have some bluish black, I have some alizarin crimson in here. I'm not sure if that shows up on the, it sort of shows up on the monitor. But I want to do a little bit more with that because these are actually dark feathers and they aren't going to have such a crisp outline. So I'm going to go over to my black. I have two blacks mixed. I have a brownish black and a bluish black, just the same two colors, transparent red and ultramarine blue, but different proportions. And then I also have my colors, my dark values from the tube colors that I'll add into that. So I'm using my filbert brush and I'm just going to drag it out almost like it's almost like a zigzag type of pattern because I want to have some of those feathers sticking out over into the red part of the bird. And right now I'm just using the black that has a little bit more blue in it, and I'll switch over. Thinking about this and I want to give it variety. If the light source is coming from the upper left, which means this way, for me, I don't know how you're seeing it. But if it's coming from the upper left, then this side of the bird's going to be warmer, meaning more reds, more browns. So I'm not going to put too much of this real bluish black color there, just a little bit. And I want to start giving the impression that there are feathers here and not just, it's not just squared, pasted on. So I'm going to work those edges a little bit. And I keep reloading my brush. I think one of the things I find really kind of funny is when I have, teaching students, they keep trying to paint without reloading. And the whole point of the exercise is to put the paint on the canvas, right? So you should be running out of paint. So keep reloading your brush. And then there is a little bit of, there's a little peak here. And then there's like a few little feathers that pop out over the eyes. It's almost like he has eyebrows. I don't want to, if I give him real definite eyebrows, he's going to look mean. And I don't necessarily want him to look mean. And I do want those feathers to poke out over the background. So having it dry there makes it my job a little bit easier. So now I'm going to switch colors. I'm going to go back. I'm going to go into my brownish black. And whoops. And you know what? I like those texture marks. I'm going to leave them. I'll probably add more of them later. It's really important to get away from your painting. And on camera, it's hard for me to do that right now. So I will reevaluate what I've done later. I can always go back in and, change something if I want to. And I want to have some other color in here because just black by itself it's okay when you're doing a small tiny bird and you can't really see that much, but when you blow it up to this magnitude, you want to be able to see more than just one color in an area. The more colors you can put in there, the better, I think. But I don't want to isolate it. So I don't want to have, on this side is all alizarin crimson and browns, and on this side is all blues. So I can add a few here. I'm going to add less than on this side, on my warm side. So I think I also want to add some violet colors. So I have pre-mixed a purple with alizarin crimson and ultramarine blue. And these are just pure color that this is pure color that I'm putting on this right now. And it's very dark, so you may not see the difference. You'd have to really be up close to it to see a difference, or to see all the different colors that are in here. All right, so for now, that's fine. I want to work a little bit on the beak. I did start the beak, but right now I feel like this part is kind of disconnected. Part of my method is to lay all the color in side by side, blend it a little bit. I didn't really blend it too much. You'll see there's a lot of areas that are kind of, disconnected. But I know that when I go back over it the second time, then I'll be able to get those colors to meld together better. I want to keep the areas rather separate in the beginning, because otherwise the tendency is to blend so much that you lose your value changes or your color shifts. So I didn't want to do that. I also want to be able to brighten up some of the reds on the left side of the bird, so that helps with my impression that I'm going to have light coming in on one side. I'm going to take a second, see if anybody has comments or questions. Hi, Linda. Hi, Karen. Hi, Suzanne. Yay! You got here. Oh, I have two Lindas. Hi, Linda Hadfield. Hi, Sherry. I'm so glad you could join me. All right, so as I'm painting, again, if you have any questions, or if you just joined me, I'm Lena Ferrara. I'm a contemporary realist painter from South Central Pennsylvania. I'm having a blast here being able to paint with you online. Something I always wanted to do, but I never had time. I teach a lot of classes. I teach, Tuesday, Wednesdays, and Thursdays in different areas in South Central Pennsylvania. So this gives me a chance to connect with my students and hopefully teach other people who've never heard of me. If you want to hear more, or if you want to read more about me, or if you're interested in seeing some of my other paintings, you can find me on lenaferrara.com, Lena-Ferrara.com. Okay, while I was looking into the monitor, I saw that this looks just a little bit too light. It's a little too distracting, the lower part of that light that I put in his eye. So I'm just going to go back over with my brush and soften that in a little bit. I have paint on my brush, so it's dark paint, and I think that's better. So as I was saying here, I want to make sure that I can get the sense that he's in the sunlight, and for that I'm going to need some lighter color here when I get to that part. So right now what I'd like to do is give the effect that I have feathers going on. So I'm going to start maybe down here where it's not so important that I get it right. I'm going to, what color do I want to use? I'm going to use red, just straight CAD red out of the tube, and see if it shows up. Yes, it shows up enough. I don't want it to be too bright. And if you watch the way I'm moving my brush, it's sort of like it's zigzags, and my pressure is very light. Sometimes I'm not even touching the surface. So the reason for that is I don't want to set up a pattern where it's, I don't want to, should I paint on my background? I don't want to set up a pattern where it's like, that, because that looks too stiff, even though it's, not outlined or anything. But I don't want to set that up. So sometimes I'll hit and sometimes I won't. So in this area, I can work with darker values and lighter values. All I did right now was just put on some cadmium red, and that cadmium red is pretty much the same value as what the underpainting was. So it does, meaning it doesn't show up that much. And if I wanted to show up a little bit more, I have two options. I can go lighter or I can go darker. I'm going to start off going darker. And the color I'm going to use a little alizarin crimson mixed with transparent red because I don't want it to be, to go too purple on me. And now I'm going to do that same zigzag motion with the darker color. And I'm looking at a photograph. So I'm really just trying to replicate shapes in the photograph. So I see that there's some darker splotches, feathers in this area. So I'm really painting the shadow underneath the feathers when I go into the dark value. You can really see it right here. It's too much, so I'm going to drag it out a little bit. But what that's doing is, it's almost like I'm negative painting. I'm painting the thing that's behind the feather, and the feather actually shows up. So that would be my process all the way through here. I'm going to do it a little more quickly. And then I'd go back and refine it. I can go back in with lighter values, or, you know, it's a process of just, you know, back and forth. Put a little dark in there, then you say, oh, I wish I hadn't done that. So then you go back and put in a little more light. If I want to darken this even more, this color, especially as I get into these darker feathers in the wing, I can go back into some violets, or, you know, those two blacks that I had mixed. I pre-mixed a bluish black and a brownish black. See, this is too harsh for right here because I had mixed my darker color in there. Don't like that. So I'm going to step away from that and put something else there. Up here in the crown, in the head, there are also, you know, some feathers. And you really want to look at your reference to see the feather direction, because these feathers are laying on top of each other pointing upward, and these feathers in the chest are laying on top of each other pointing downward. And they also, like at the edge, they're flatter. I'm sorry, at the edge there's more of an angle, and then it flattens out as you are in the center, and then again it changes direction out over the wings. And I didn't, I'm only painting the head, so you really don't have a lot of the wing to see, except this little piece here. And I'm going to jump around. I have to apologize for that, because that's just the way I paint. I'll see, I have like attention deficit disorder. I see a little section and I think, oh, wait, let me do that before I forget. So I'm going to jump up to the head a little, just a hair, a little bit, with my darks. I think I have enough darks in here, actually. Oh, maybe I'll put a few over here. Yeah, don't have enough paint. Listen to yourself. Okay, I'll put a little bit of a dark. And you can see that sometimes my brush is hitting and sometimes not. So it gives me a little bit looser look. And not so, I'm not painting every feather. If I had to do that, I probably wouldn't paint. That's just my personality. Some people love to do detail. So then, you know, yay for them. That's just not what I want to do. All right, I would like to put a few lighter feathers in here, and just the cad red isn't doing that. I'm going to mix my cad red with just a little bit of this azo coral that I'm using, which is just a lighter orange, and that's not showing up. So then I'm going to mix in a little bit of cad yellow into that mix. So I'm getting sort of an orangey color, a lighter. There we go. I don't want to get too light here, and I don't want it to look too orange right now. I do want to stay in the darker value, a darker red. So I'm throwing these words out assuming that you know what I'm talking about. Value is the darkness or lightness of a color. So the way to change the value is to add a lighter color or white. White is obviously a lighter color. The thing about white is, though, it dulls your color down, and you might not want that in some areas. Like when I'm working in this area, I really want it to be lighter and brighter, so I'm not gonna go to white if I can help it. I'm going to mix my orange with a little bit of yellow right in here because I do, there we go. And I'm still doing this motion where it's like a triangle. I'm going to erase all this so it doesn't, that's just a little bit of walnut oil. There we go. So I can get some lighter values over in this side where it's supposed to look like the sun's hitting him. So this is number 3 in this series, and I'm not sure how much longer I want to paint a male cardinal without a female. That may be my next painting, but I'm trying to learn something from each one of these paintings, and so far I love painting the eyes. I've discovered that I'd rather paint the eyes than the rest of the bird. I may just do the next one will just be eyes. I don't know. But now do you see how much lighter, more sunlit this area is? And it's just still those little strokes. Looks like feathers, but I didn't really, I didn't work that hard on it. I just have that little zigzaggy stroke going on. I'm going to pull some out over the edge so that I don't want to leave this very smooth. I don't have any smooth areas to show you. All right, this area is a little bit smooth. It's a little too smooth. I want to give the effect that there are little feathers coming up. He's kind of puffed up. It's cold out there. Let's lighten up this part of his head also. So here, I'm going to do that same stroke back and forth. My angle's at, my brush is at about a 45-degree angle. And that's important. And I'm sort of on the side of my brush too. That's important to get that triangular stroke, shaped stroke. So just little squiggles back and forth. I may have to go in there with another color. I don't know. I'll wait and see. If you can notice, though, the color I'm putting on here is much brighter than the color that's underneath, and I do need both. I need the dull and I need the bright. I don't want to cover up everything that I have on here already, so I want some of that other color to show through. As I move across the bird, I don't want to have the bright color travel all the way over to the other side. Bright and light, meaning the bright means I haven't toned it down with anything, and light is I haven't lightened it with another color. In here, I do want to get a little bit more stroke, but I'm using a darker value, and I'm using that cad red again. And some of the background is showing through there, and it almost looks like a highlight, so I'm going to leave it. I'll put a little bit more of this red on this side of his head. I like this bird. I don't say that about every painting. Some of them just don't work, or it takes longer for it to work. So I don't like how sharp some of these lines are, so I'm just going to go over one or two of them. I don't want to lose them all, but I don't want to have them too definitive right there. So as I come on this side, I could break this up a little bit, this area right in here, because it's a little solid. So I don't want to lighten it because it's on the shadow side of the bird. I'm going to come back in and get some darker values here. And I'm just using transparent red with a little alizarin crimson. And I'm just almost reverse painting so that I'm painting the shadow under the feather. And how do I know? I mean, I have to look at a reference. I can't make it up out of my head. I might be able to get close because I've painted so many of these, but I can't imagine what nature, is actually going to show. My imagination isn't that good. So I would almost always painting from either from life or from photographic reference. And if this bird, I believe this bird photo is one that my husband took. But if you don't have access to photos like that, there's some great sites. Paintmyphoto.com is a really good site. There's also some Facebook groups where photographers put their photographs up so that people can paint from them. It's really a very generous thing that they do. So, and I don't, it's always a good thing to credit whose ever photo you're using. So it didn't take me very long to get this fluffy and feathery looking. I think I'm going to paint into some of the black. It may or may not show up because black is a hard color to try to cover up, but I can lay the paint on a little bit thicker if I want to come into and just drop it off. And you're obviously going to pick up some black, so you may want to keep wiping your brush. I always have a paper towel in my hand, and every third or fourth stroke I'm wiping off my brush because you're picking other colors up and you don't want to dirty up your paint or that you're applying. This is over dried, so it's not really not picking anything up, but I do want to make that edge less smooth. I want it to look more like feathers rather than, see, it's a little square down here for me. I think I'm going to pull out with some dark, some black. And I'm picking up the black that has a little bit more blue in it because I don't want to mess up my illusion of shadow and light. Okay, let's play with the wing a little bit. So I have pretty much all the dark values here in the wing. And there are some lighter feathers. So but now what color am I going to use? If you look at cardinals, there's a lot of blue in them. It's kind of surprising until you start looking at the photographs. So again, if anybody has any questions, please feel free to ask. I can actually see your questions now. Okay. All right. So I picked up a blue, ultramarine blue mixed with a little bit of white. And I'm just doing that same kind of zigzag stroke, but the strokes are longer because in the wing feathers, the feathers are longer. Here they're little short, tiny, fluffy feathers, but when you get into the wing, the feathers are more elongated. So I want to give that impression. So my stroke is longer. I'm going to give there's a few little fluffy feathers here at the top of the wing. And how do I know that? It's just observation. I'm really trying to analyze the photograph before I start painting from it. And I think I'm going to put a little bit of red in here too, because I don't want it to look like a separate, even though it's a separate body part, I don't want it to look too separated from the rest of the paint. So I'll go in there with a little bit of my cad red mixed with some transparent red because I don't want it as bright as this. And just drop a little bit of red in there. And I'm doing that same thing with a zigzag. When I first blocked in the color, it was not, I didn't worry about my zigzags. I just said patch here, this color looks like that, patch over here, patch over here. I normally pre-mix my colors. So I look at the photograph and try to match as many of the colors in the photograph as I can see. And then after that, it's so much easier to just pick up something from my palette than trying to mix the color every single time. Because what happens to me, and probably to you too, is you get lazy. You'll say, oh, it's close enough, so I'm not gonna worry about, you know, mixing it, or I can change it later, and then you never do. And then what happens is you have a painting that sort of looks flat. All right, so I want to, let's see where I want to work next. I think I want to work in the beak a little bit. I also think this isn't quite the top, his head isn't quite light enough. So, all right, before I go to the beak, let me go back up there. I'm going to use my orange mixed with a little bit of cad yellow and give some more light feathers. I'm actually pushing the paint in a little bit more now because I have a coat under it. Oh, that's better. I have a coat of paint under it. So in order to make it stick, I want to just push a little bit more. I actually added a little bit of white. Let's see if I like that or not. I'm not sure yet. I'll leave it for now. I'll decide later. I don't have to decide everything at once. I try never to use white all by itself because it's too chalky, and it makes your color look, it dulls your color actually. So there are times when you need it, but hardly ever by itself. That might be too light. We'll see. I sort of, okay. It's making him look a little bit more sunlit. And that's yellow with a little, and orange with a little bit of white in it, not, you know, not white straight. All right. This part of his head looks disconnected from anything else. And that's just because there's a solid color here and relatively solid, and I haven't done anything. So I'm going to go back to my red, my cad red, and just add a few feathery strokes in there. And I'm just doing the same thing over and over, zigzags, little zigzags of, and sometimes, you know, there'll be like a little point. He didn't have a hairdresser, you know, they're all closed down right now because of the coronavirus. There we go. Ah, that's good. And a few loose feathers out there on the edge. Now that's a little bit more red in the wing. It's long strokes in the wing, remember that. Now, if I have something here that I don't like, my paint's still wet, I can go in and soften it out. I don't know if I want to, but I'll show you how anyway. And just, okay, so I wipe my brush. I have no real amount of paint on my brush, and I'm just going over it gently. I'm dusting over it, and that is going to soften the colors together enough. So I don't want to get rid of them, but I want to subdue them. I don't want them to be so noticeable. And then sometimes I'll do that and decide, oh, well, I did want it to be more noticeable than that. So then you just go back in and put more on. All right, let's work on this beak a little bit. So what I want to do is give you the same impression that there's light shining. Right now, there are a lot of pinks in here and purples, and those are really nice colors, but they're the same. Temperature-wise, they're the same on both sides. So there's sort of a pink that leans to the violets, Now I want to put more of an orangey pink on it. So I'm going, instead of alizarin crimson and white and maybe a little bit of blue, which is what I used here, I'm going to go with some cad red and a little, oh, I already have it pre-mixed. Okay, look at that. Smarter than I thought I was. So cad red, a little transparent orange because I don't want it bright, and white, and a little bit of yellow also. So right in this area, I have to test it. I'm not sure if it's the right value. If it might be too dark. Oh, it is too dark. So I'm gonna go lighten that up a little bit just with my brush. You can see what I'm doing over here on the side. I'm picking up a little bit of color. So I have the paints mixed already, but I also just put a little drop of white there next to it in case I need to lighten something. This way I'm not reaching up into my pile of white every time I'm making the whole pile dirty. Although you see that I did that anyway. So yeah, I have good intentions. All right, so right up here, there's a little bit of light hitting that part of his beak. So I want to put my brush down there first. When I have the most load of paint, and that's where I want to drop it off. And then I'll drag it down so that I don't just have one little spot of light. I sort of like that, but it does need to be a little bit lighter. So I'm going to go back to my mix and just add a little bit more white to my brush. And maybe a little more yellow too, because white by itself is not going to give you warmth. And I want warmth here. So I added a little bit of white, and then when I add the yellow, it darkened it a little, so back to a little bit more white. Okay, I think that's, for now, that's good. I can always change my mind. That's why I like oil paint. It's easy to change your mind. Right in here, I think this is too light. I just, added that little streak, but it doesn't really blend into the rest of the beak. It's sort of looking a little separate. And it's the same lightness value. It's the same value as you go across. And I don't want that. I want this to be a little bit darker and this to be a little bit lighter. So I'm going to go back to my blue, my ultramarine blue and white, and let me just check that color. Yeah, that's pretty good. Just, I want to soften this together, so I'm going to add that other color and just drag it over. So I'm dragging it over. It's it's a little different technique. It's sort of skimming over the top of the little nubs in the canvas, and you're still seeing the color under it. It doesn't always work, and if you put medium in with it, it's not going to do that. It's gonna, it's just gonna be a blue patch. But I'll try this and see if I like it, and if not, I can add more medium. It's still not dark enough right here where there's a transition between. Yeah, it looks too light. Let me go back to a darker color. I think there was purple here, and I like the purple, so I'm gonna go back and put that. Add some violets in there. Oh. All right. Now here I want to lighten it up, and I think I'm just going to pick up a little white with a little yellow. I think I have the color already right here. I don't want to lighten up the whole side. I'm going to choose the part that's closer to the front of the beak. I'm also trying to create form here. So if I lighten up the whole side, it's going to flatten that area out. Maybe too yellow. I don't know. I go into a little bit more white. And now I'm just going to concentrate that on the tip. We want to have the beak come forward also. So I'm looking at it and I'm not happy yet. I think I want to work on this transition a little bit. So that's a reddish violet, which means ultramarine blue and transparent red. I'm sorry, ultramarine blue, alizarin crimson, and white. I already have a purple mixed, so what I'm doing is adding a little bit of a little bit more alizarin crimson to that. want to darken it up a little. Oh, that's better. It's just a little too light. And I want to darken this up a little too. But here I'm going to use more of that blue violet rather than, there we go, that's better. So it's picking up much lighter on the monitor than it is. It's really a lot darker. I think I do want to knock that back a bit. So I'm going to go back into my ultramarine blue and white and just paint that over a little so these two sides are different. I'm also going to lighten this one more time. So back into my white and yellow. And I really should use a different brush because I have other colors on here and it's going to muddy up my color. I can see it's muddy already. Get away. Going to a clean brush. I'm laying that, whoops, laying a little bit of clean color on there. And very gently because I don't want it, I want it to sit on top. I don't want it to mix in with the rest of the paint. And I'm just going to drag it down a little bit. And I can go back to this when it dries if I need to get that a little bit brighter. This looks too yellow up here, so I want to put a little bit more red in with it, or orange. So I'm picking up my azo coral. And I'm only using azo coral because I couldn't find my cat orange this morning when I was looking for paint. I know it's here somewhere. That's a little bit better. I don't want it so yellow looking. All right. Well, let's see what else I need to. I didn't think I'd be able to finish him so fast. Let's do a little bit of shadow work on the bottom of the beak. So his beak was, I mean, it makes sense when you think about it that when they're eating all those seeds that they would crack their beak a little bit. But I never thought about it before. So the beak isn't like nice and straight. It has chips in it. But I don't want to have all these little raggedy edges that I have just because I wasn't careful when I put that highlight on. So I'm going to go back into this. It's a violet, but I'm going to tone that down a little bit because even though it's a dark color, it's still bright, and I don't want it to be bright right underneath this beak. So I toned it down with a little bit of my black mix. There we go. Might be too toned down. We'll see. And I'm just cleaning up that edge, and then I want to soften it into the paint that's around it, even though it's dry. The paint around it's dry. This way I've sharpened that up a little bit. I don't want to give him too many cracks, so I'll go back and repair his beak on this side. Whoops, too much paint on there. There we go. Let's smooth that out. I like the cracks here, but I don't want to have it everywhere. All right. Okay, is there anything else there? So I'm going to look here. Do you see this little area where it looks like I have three spots in a row? And then up here where it's, there's just too much of a contrast right here. So I want to break that up. A lot of painting is going back and, reevaluating and fixing the things that you just put in. Eventually it gets that happens less and less often, but sometimes when you're not concentrating, you set up some interesting odd shapes that you don't want to leave. So right here where I have these looks like three splotches, three dark splotches, I don't want to keep that. Just going to put in a feather over that. I still left a little bit of it showing through so that it looks like shadow from the feather, but it's not. Here's another line I just created. Let's get rid of that. All right, I sort of like that. Well, I'm so happy that you're able to join me today. I'm going to be doing another Facebook Live probably, well, definitely next week. And if you liked what you saw and you want to see another video, just go over to my website. It's lena-ferrara.com. Sign up for the newsletter, and I will email you an announcement before when, the day before I go live. It'll probably be next Friday. So that's all for today. Thank you so much for joining me, and have a wonderful day. And get those brushes out and start painting. It helps the time fly by. All right, take care. See you soon.